audience. They are going to introduce themselves in the first question, which is, tell us about yourself. What are the kinds of things you do every day?
Hi, everyone. I'm a publishing writer, artful activist, public scholar, and practicing optimist. As a poet and writer, I am currently collaborating with artist Malcolm Corley and fellow poets, Claretta Halsey, Lateef McLeod, and Joriel Watkins on a book of poetry and visual art forthcoming from Prompt Press in fall 2021. As a public scholar, I teach and present nationally on a range of topics and am currently revising an autoethnographic study entitled Unearthing the Tools and Concepts That Bury Us, that is forthcoming in a scholarly anthology in fall 2021. And am starting a collaboration with my dad on life writing across genres. I am also going to be co-teaching some poetry workshops this spring. As a working board member of the Alliance for Citizen-Directed Support, I am spearheading a project entitled Lives in Progress. The project will include an interactive national map that will document diverse paths to meaningful, self-directed lives, allowing people to search for resources, identify practical approaches, and find lived examples and mentors by geographic location, interests, talents, and vocations. I also serve on the Neuroclastics board and am on the advisory board for Communication First. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, I am a practicing optimist who lives life as a meditation on hope. I make time every week to connect with friends I know from college and others I've met virtually since the pandemic.
Awesome. Thank you so much, DJ. I was a huge fan of your documentary, and I really enjoyed what you said about the importance of self-directed supports. I think that is such an important concept, especially for non-speaking autistic people who often don't have the right to self-directed supports for so many reasons. And we'll explore that a little more later in the panel. So we'll jump to the next question, and it's, how do you feel about the way that autism is talked about and framed in the world? You know, how do you feel about the high functioning / low functioning, or, you know, mild, severe, or like spicy dichotomies? And how has it impacted you in your own life personally? Or, you know, for you, Celeste, like how has it impacted your son as well? And DJ, what are your thoughts on this question? All right, I'm going to spotlight you, DJ.
I'm not a big fan of binaries. My least favorite is verbal and nonverbal. I think people use it to desert hope for non-speaking people. It's part of the idea of a spectrum or of a weeding out classification. And it's unjust because it's segregating non-speaking people into classrooms of easy lessons. It hasn't impacted what I've been able to achieve, but it has impacted how I'm perceived daily on the streets. I've traveled across the country giving presentations, film screenings, and teaching classes, and I've rarely seen another alternatively communicating person out and about in the world with me. And because of that, I find some people look at me as if I shouldn't be allowed out. I think the more we insist on being out and about, the more others' ignorance about us will subside. I've been trying wherever I go to make a point of asking people to stop using nonverbal and to refer to us as non-traditionally speaking and alternatively communicating. And it's really starting to catch on. Someone in the audience asked what is one of the things that parents and professionals need to do to support non-speaking autistics. This is something everyone can start doing today.
Awesome, thank you. what you said about, having to walk through the street and dealing with other people's perceptions, like really like ties directly to something Grant and I were talking about earlier today, where, if you were to go, to Starbucks and like order like a vanilla latte, like people would be judging his competency and, his ability to do that. And it's sort of an example where, oppression, you know, exists as restricting your ability to move throughout the world and make the choices that like non-disabled people can take, on a like daily basis without, essentially realizing it's something that not everyone is able to take for granted, whether they be, disabled or a person of color or who might have another marginalized identity. So yeah, really glad you brought that up. So the next question we have is, how has the framing and societal of perceptions impacted the services you have received in your life? Do you feel like there's any services or opportunities you did not get because of, these framings? DJ, what are you thinking?
I can't say I've been denied any services, but I hear daily from those who have been. I was fully included from kindergarten through college graduation with school-funded classroom assistance, and I was able to access AAC devices as I was growing up. My only complaint is that I should be able to access the same supports as a gainfully self-employed person that I received as a student. I did receive the support assistance I needed from Open Society Foundations during my post-college fellowship, but since that ended in 2019, I've been responsible for my own support assistance. The UN's Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities calls on every country to offer us the assistive technology needed to actively participate in every aspect of life, political, economic, educational, and social. It acknowledges that assistive technology needn't be something fancy to work. It's these kinds of documents that are needed to ensure our human rights are preserved. I encourage people to join organizations like the Alliance for Citizen-Directed Support and Communication First, who are disability-led organizations, actively fighting for our rights to self-determined, meaningfully engaged, self-efficacious lives.
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad you mentioned Communication First. They recently released a video that was addressing the representation issue that autistic people were raising against Sia, who is a well-known Australian artist who essentially appropriated, autistic people and the autistic identity for use in one of her movies, and did not, she did not represent autistic people at all. So the short film called Listen has just been posted in chat. So if folks have, a chance, I would definitely encourage you all to watch it. It's very important. And, DJ, I'm glad that you didn't have your, your options restricted. That is, refreshing and rare to hear. Definitely in contrast to what Grant was going through. But it's good to know, sometimes things can still work. But I think it's important to reflect on, what actually, makes all of that happen, what makes inclusion happen, and why isn't it happening for, many autistic folks right now. So thank you. The next question we have, and it's a long one, so bear with me. If an autistic person is not able to speak with their mouth parts, it's often assumed that it means they're not able to think or to understand the world around them and make decisions for themselves. Yet several of you are capable of communicating in ways other than speaking. And so what I'm wondering is, like, what's happened that makes you capable of doing so, or why is that when like so many other autistic people are thought of as not being able to do so. Is it like a matter of the environment you've, existed in and the supports you've been able to receive? Is it something to do with biology? And thinking about something Kedar wrote, where he was in a classroom, teachers couldn't understand him, and he couldn't communicate in a way the teachers could understand. He looked around and saw, many other autistic people in the classroom going through the same experience. And so I'm also wondering, like, is that, do you see other like non-speaking autistic people going through that? Does that make sense? Um, DJ, I'm also excited to hear what you have to say.
I've been a multimodal communicator since I was 5. I was fully included, and everyone needed a way to answer questions in class. I was taught to read and write by my teachers at school, and I was able to get more and more adept at responding. I was taught to communicate by everyone in my life throughout my entire day. Someone in the audience asked, "What are your preferred modes of communication, and does it change depending on place, time, people you are with?" The website for my film describes me as someone who uses a text-to-speech synthesizer to communicate. Yet, in truth, I, and so many of my peers, use a number of tools: augmentative communication devices, computers with text-to-speech software, our own vocal cords, written language, letterboards, emails, video chats, G-chats, signs, gestures, objects, body movements, pointing, pictures, borrowing others' voices, by choice or by circumstance, even poetry and its oil paint animation in the film. During my speech at the UN, I advocated for multimodal communication. We need multimodal communication to allow for maximum flexibility and accessibility. If high-tech options were my only means of communication, I wouldn't be where I am today. When I was little, I used lots of food labels and photos to tell people what I wanted, to understand my choices, and to comprehend where I was going and what we were about to eat. I use manual sign language to convey my essential commands. Things like, "I need to use the bathroom. Please stop. Go. I'm done. I need a break. I need something to eat or to drink or more of something." I would never use my assistive technology to quickly tell someone I need to use the bathroom, but often people expect non-speakers to use it first for mundane commands. I think it's not practical as the place to start. We need communication to build relationships. It's those connections that make us thrive. It is this multimodal, rhizomatic approach to communicating, one that reaches out and up, that allows us to thrive and avoid isolation in a world that seeks to contain so-called non-speaking people. Millions of people currently remain unnecessarily misunderstood. I am hopeful to see how many of our audience members are here today wanting to know how they can do better to support alternative communication, and I commend Zach and the Arc of King County for sponsoring tonight's event. If you're interested in learning more about practical ideas that help, please check out my listentous.net website and tell me what I can do to support you.
That's a very kind offer, DJ, and I'll make sure that that website is posted in the chat for people to access. Yeah, and multimodal communication does seem so important to think about and use. I never really realized myself that all of the different types of communication takes a different amount of energy to use, and that you'd be more likely to use one over the other in specific situations. And I guess it does tie back to what Celeste was saying earlier about like the autistic experience being fluid, like even for like non-speaking autistic folks, like, you know, just the strain of communicating and just, you know, trying to get through the day, like means that, you know, you won't always have the energy to, you know, type your words out, and you'll need to use and that, you know, those around you will have to be flexible and be able to adapt to that. And definitely thinking about, you know, what I've heard from parents of non-speaking autistic children, like they often just try like one or two methods at the same time, or just one method at a single time, and they don't really like use multiple simultaneously for a variety of reasons. And I think that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. And I think parents and families definitely need to be supported through that process. And I think it points to the reason why it's so important to have like non-speakers like working in the early intervention settings, or like all of the places that serve autistic people. Like that's a huge, I think, systemic change that really needs to happen. So thank you, DJ, for providing that answer and, you know, really helping enhance my and the audience insight on that. That's amazing. The next question, which is, you know, it's really thinking about the, you know, like what needs to change. So the question is like, what kind of change do you want to make in the world? What kind of change needs to be made to make it easier for you to exist in the world the way you want to exist? What should speaking autistic people or non-autistic people do to make that happen, you know, in terms of like thinking about, you know, allyship or accomplishment? So thank you. DJ, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
If people don't know, they don't know, they think they know. Society's ignorance of their own ignorance costs non-speaking people their lives. Presumed incompetent and denied training in literacy and communication skills. Many non-speaking people are segregated in separate classes or schools for kids with disabilities, denied basic human rights, and later housed in sheltered workshops and larger residential placements. It is challenging but essential to change the societal assumptions that work systemically, and sometimes invisibly, to lower expectations and deny non-speaking people access to basic human rights, such as literacy-based education and the right to pattern our own lives. So hopeful folks, how can you help? Number 1. Don't speak for us. Computers and augmentative communication devices give alternative communicators a voice that is both easy for everyone to comprehend and efficient and sophisticated enough for us to convey complicated ideas in a timely manner. It allows us to shape the discussions we're having about our people as well as the world around us. Computers and text-to-speech software give us a voice to be heard by large groups of people, and each exchange is mutually beneficial. No longer isolated and dependent upon others to advocate for us, we are empowered to make a difference and to represent ourselves. That is self-efficacy. That is freedom in my estimation. Number 2. Listen to, hear, and read us. Ideally, the person themselves needs to be heard. If they're still learning, then read books by, and sponsor and attend presentations by, other alternatively communicating people. Be a discriminating viewer of media and film representations of us and help guide your friends, family, and colleagues to those that are fresh thinking. Be sure to explain why other depictions of us are simplistic, outright wrong, or harmful. See his recently released film entitled Music is Terrible. Check out Communication First's website, a new short film entitled Listen to Find Out Why. Nothing about us without us is a familiar and important disability rights adage, but remember, just because a film contains or centers on a real non-speaking person doesn't mean that person had any say in how they were represented. I love my documentary film Deej. Inclusion shouldn't be a lottery, but I worked hard to make it into the film it is. I'm hopeful my film will ask us all how we can help make the world less narrowly focused. You ask what kind of change we'd like to see in the world. I'm always speaking about this. As Goddess Sage says, your mind will always believe everything you tell it. Feed it hope. Feed it truth. Feed it love. We need to ask what all of us can do to create a field of diverse and interconnected beings and not the cultivated garden of a speech-based society. It's hard to say this in a quick soundbite, but you can find me talking at length about it at an NEH-funded series hosted by the Hastings Center in December. I end the presentation this way. We've all read about ecosystems unwittingly devastated by us humans removing some element, some being from its natural environment to quote-unquote, benefit the well-being of some other inhabitant. The pandemic has shed light on our common practice of doing this even to one another. The American and ableist ideals of self-reliance and independence cut us off from one another and position us as adversaries, vying for ownership over a scarcity of resources. What if, instead, we experienced ourselves as part of the intricate web of interdependence that is our ecosystem, acknowledging that we make the world a better place when each one of us has the freedom to breathe and to grow?
That was such a beautiful answer. Like it was like, I mean, it was literally poetry. It was wonderful. It was thought-provoking, and yeah, I'm still like marinating on it a little. There's so much to think about. Um, yeah, but definitely, at the core of it, we're all connected. We're all a part of the same ecosystem, the same society, and separating us into, categories and then, you know, causing oppression based on those categories does not at all serve anyone. So yeah, thank you so much, Deej. That was wonderful. I will also ask for, patience and understanding for DJ and Grant. They had the questions I asked ahead of time, but for these audience questions, they'll probably be able to answer them, but it might take them a while to type them. So, Celeste or, either DJ or Grant's parents might also step in and answer the questions while DJ and Grant are typing them. So yeah. Francis, do you have the questions ready?
Yeah. Can everyone hear me? I'm good. First, I just want to say that there are so many positive comments in the chat box. And so I just want to say that people are loving this. The first question is, do you feel like the speaking autistic community voices concerns that are relevant to supporting non-traditionally speaking autistic people? And that was a question from Katrina.
DJ, do you have anything you want to add here, or Ralph?
Deej, do you want to go?
I think I'm open to most people and they to me. So sure, ASAN has been a supporter of my work since the beginning and have invited me to contribute in many ways. But our lives as non-speakers also has much in common with non-traditional speakers with other differences. In some ways I relate more readily with deaf and motor impacted people.
Oh, and that's so important. Like the autistic community, like as a culture, we've gotten so many of our norms from, the deaf community, like our preference for identity first, like calling ourselves autistic versus like people with autism. And yeah, I'm so glad you brought up that connection. Thank you. Ralph, you're still unmuted. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm having so much fun listening to folks.
Cool. Yeah, I am as well, and I'm I'm the one facilitating it, so it's great.
Zach? I,
Yep.
I just a really simple thing that we do in our house is there might be a day where there's no talking by anybody, and that what you ask, what you need to ask speaking people to do is experience the business of not speaking, communicating in other ways, living in silence, slowing down, and adapting to another way of being. And you can discover as a speaking person that this is a glorious accommodation for you, not for the non-speaking, but it can be that. But I think, that wonderful movie Wretches and Jabberers. Those of us who speak are jabberers.
Yeah, that's a great movie.